head is going into the duodenum. So we call the head of the pancreas this side, and then the tail goes out towards the spleen. And then we have this pancreatic duct. The pancreas is both an endocrine and an exocrine organ. It secretes stuff, so it's exocrine, but it's endocrine because it's part of the endocrine system, and it's going to secrete two things: insulin. Insulin, I don't have a clicker, so I can't see it. Insulin is going to get a hold of glucose and bring blood sugar down. If blood sugar is low, we're going to secrete glucagon, and that's going to bring blood pressure down. So the pancreas handles blood sugar issues. We're either going to keep it up where it needs to go, or we're going to bring it down and keep it where it needs to stay. And how it does that is by the endocrine functions of insulin and glucagon. So when we're talking about diabetics, it's an insulin that they have. And if you're type 1 or type 2 diabetic, it depends on why are you like that. Type 1 diabetic is we have a pancreas, and it has these cells that produce insulin. So if you're type 1 diabetic, the pancreas can't make insulin. And those are called Langerhans cells, or islet Langerhans. And your pancreas can't make insulin. That's type 1 diabetic. You're born with that. And it's usually diagnosed from very young up into junior high, maybe even high school. And that diabetic is usually a very thin person. Type 2 diabetes is you have diabetes because you gave it to yourself. So type 2 diabetes is you're overeating, you're eating too much sugar, and the body says, well, we have so much, we don't need to make any more. You're putting so much on board, and your pancreas stops secreting insulin because you're overtaxing it. And so that's why we can control type 2 diabetes with diet and exercise. And if you clean up your diet and you lose weight, then you can get back out of type 2 diabetes.
Did you say if you have type 2 diabetes, you gave it to yourself?
You have it because of something you've done.
Because when I was pregnant, I had gestational diabetes.
Yes.
And they said my baby is prone to type 2.
Right. So during pregnancy, that's another thing. That's the third type of diabetes, which is gestational diabetes. And you're eating, and your blood sugar gets out of balance, and then you become a diabetic during pregnancy. And then you go back to not being diabetic once the baby's
But
born.
I was not eating like that. I was even throwing up everything. So
Yeah.
wasn't
So, but that's a common thing, is that you'll go into diabetes during pregnancy. And then the baby gets larger and larger, and this is why we'll have like those 10 and 12 pound babies.
But this baby was 6 pounds.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Yeah, but sometimes we'll have those big babies because they're just feeding on that sugar. The sugar's not being maintained. And not that you're eating just a sugary diet, but your blood sugar's out of balance now, and that insulin glucagon balance is out, and that baby's just give me an IV of sugar. So the baby gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and we get into these 10 and 12 pound babies because of that. And then once you're not pregnant, once the baby's born, then you go back to not being diabetic again. It might take a little bit to get back to that, like a month or two, but it's a function of being pregnant. And then that baby's been subjected to that, so they're at a little higher risk of becoming diabetic. Not necessarily that they will,
Okay.
but it's kind of you're just kind of predisposing them to a better opportunity to become diabetic. So type 1 or 2. 1 is genetic; you're born with it. The pancreas just isn't making the cells to make insulin, so you have to take the shot or the pill or something. And type 2, we've gotten ourselves into that situation, so we can manage that with diet and exercise. All right. So there's the head of the pancreas tucked into the duodenum, and then there's the tail, the pancreatic duct. And then we're looking inside, and we have our acini cells that are making insulin. We have Langerhans cells that are making insulin. And the pancreas is going to secrete the two things, insulin and bicarbonate. Here it is again, HCO3. We talked a lot about that with the kidneys. It also comes from the pancreatic duct, and that's going to help neutralize, because all that food stuff is coming down from the stomach into the small intestines. So the pancreas is going to help secrete some bicarbonate to neutralize that strong acidy stuff coming down. And then these are just the different cells we're gonna see in there. What's the pancreas gonna secrete? Pancreatic lipase, that's the enzyme that breaks down fat. Protease, the enzyme that's gonna break down proteins. Nucleic, pancreatic amylase, breaking down carbs from the stomach. Bicarbonate. So this is just showing, you don't have to memorize all that, but that's just showing that the liver is secreting, or the pancreas is secreting a bunch of stuff, not just insulin and glucagon. Insulin and glucagon makes it an endocrine organ. All of this stuff here make it an exocrine. It's getting out of the pancreas, going into the small intestine. So that's why we say the pancreas is both kinds. We're getting rid of all this stuff and dumping it into the small intestines. And then we go the liver and gallbladder or sending bile down into that HPA. So this is how everything gets into the small intestines, is that little ampulla right there. From liver and gallbladder, bile salts, bicarbonates coming from there too, and then across from the pancreas. All of this stuff is coming into the small intestines to help with digestion. Out in the blood is where insulin and glucagon are. All of this stuff is coming into the small intestines to help with digestion. So the pancreas is unique in that it's an endocrine and an exocrine. Questions over there? Pancreas does a lot. That's the one kind of cancer you don't want to have. Pancreatic cancer, you don't want any kind of cancer. But pancreatic cancer is so resistant to chemotherapy, to radiation, and once you get pancreatic cancer, the sentence is like 6 months to 2 years. Usually it's a very rapid cancer. I've known several people that have passed away from that. One was like 2 weeks later from diagnosis. But a lot of times they get misdiagnosed because they have digestive problems and they have stomach issues, and then that's what it is. So don't freak out if you have stomach issues. But it goes undiagnosed for a while. It doesn't really matter. The sooner the later you diagnose it, it's still a terminal cancer because it's so resistant to anything. But I've seen it happen two weeks up to about 2 years. A year is probably the longest I've known anybody survive with treatment. So a bad cancer again. Has both endocrine and exocrine functions. Insulin, glucagon. Exocrine is more exiting the pancreas, going to the small intestines, helping with digestion. And then here's the acinite cells of the pancreas. These are the little cells that are going to make that insulin that we need. And if it's working properly, you're producing insulin and things are working well. If not, this is what goes wrong with type 1 diabetics, is these cells aren't making insulin. So you just don't have it. You have to have the pill, the shot, or the pump to get the insulin into your system. All right, pancreas question. Into the large intestine. So we know it begins at the end of the ileum. We transition from the ileocecal valve. We go cecum. Down on the bottom, we have the appendix. And then the colon, ascending, transverse across, descending down, sigmoids the turn, and then out the rectum, and finally out the anus. Again, we're going to have that bicarbonate. We're going to have mucus. Those are the secretions of the large intestines. Bicarbonate, we're still buffering that acidy food, and mucus to make things move through more easily. So we're going to have that mechanical stimulation of peristalsis, pushing things through the large intestines. And we have the mucus and we have the bicarbonate, so we're going to make things more alkaline instead of acidy. The colon, we have our regions that we've talked about, ascending. Then we call it the hepatic flexure when we switch over and when we turn, so that corner is the hepatic flexure. We go across the transverse, then we go down, that's the splenic flexure. So which side are we on, right or left side, hepatic versus splenic flexure? Descending and sigmoid. The transverse and sigmoid kind of anchor it in up here on the top. We're anchoring it up here, and the sigmoid is kind of anchoring it down on the bottom. And then the sigmoid runs into the rectum, and then finally out the anal canal. And we have the internal and external sphincters guarding that open. So here's our picture we're coming in, there's our little appendix hanging out. Here's our ileocecal valve. This is the mesentery, that lacy apron is kind of loose with holding things into place. So we come through the valve, the ileocecal valve, the cecum, appendix is right down there. Ascending, transverse, descending, sigmoid, rectum, and anus. And then you notice we have this ribbon-like thing going through the intestines, and the intestines are kind of loopy and puckery. That ribbon thing is, let's see, where is this? The tinea coli, right here. So the ribbon is the tinea coli. It's kind of like a drawstring on your pants. We don't really know why it's there, it's just part of it, but that's what makes it get puckery. You kind of tighten that, and it makes that loopy intestine kind of get puckery. And then those puckers are called posturas. So normal intestines should look loopy. It's loopy because we have that ribbon going through that's kind of pulling on it, and it puckers it up, and those puckers are called posturas. So that's the anatomy of it. We have these little, so this is what we're talking about when we have diverticulitis, Crohn's disease, irritable bowel disease. It's affecting the large intestines. Remember, large intestines is just our elimination. So this is fecal matter going out. And the longer it spends in there, the more water it absorbs, so we get constipated. The less time it spends in there, we don't have time to get water out, so we have diarrhea. If the lining gets irritated, then you have cramping, you have the pain, you have bouts of diarrhea, constipation. So that's all large intestines, Crohn's, irritable bowel. And what happens, we don't want to eat nuts or seeds, you guys have heard that before, is because they back up in these little pockets here, and then they can go out and cause even more irritation or inflammation. It's kind of like getting a cavity, and you get food in it, and it gets impacted. Same thing, if we put little bits of things like nuts and seeds that are hard to break down, it can just sit in there and fester. So that's why we want to avoid things like that. So if you have a Crohn's, irritable bowel thing, that's what happens. With celiac disease, we actually get little holes in here. And remember, the intestines is for absorption, large or small intestines. And we get holes in celiac disease, and things kind of leak out. Have you ever heard the word leaky gut syndrome? We can't absorb everything we need. So this is large intestine. Celiac is small intestine where absorption happens. But same kind of thing. We have that loopy lining, and we get like little micro perforations, and things aren't getting in and things are getting out, so we get all kinds of problems. Celiac is gluten.
So the gluten you avoid to keep it from.
So the gluten is what causes that irritant, and it irritates that intestine. And so you're gluten intolerant, just like if you would be allergic to cats or dogs or corn or wheat or whatever. Wheat is celiac. It is gluten, and gluten is the glue that holds things together. So has anybody ever gone gluten-free, tried gluten-free breads?
Yeah,
Nasty.
I like it.
It's not terrible.
I like gluten-free
Kind of
food.
lightens things. Have you ever had like rice bread, or they're just dense, heavy, not normal, good white bread, or even wheat bread. So gluten binds things and it lightens things. If you go gluten-free and you try bread substitutes, you're looking for dense bread. But irritation, inflammation of the large colon, that's all irritable bowel, Crohn's disease, diverticulitis, that's where we're seeing that. So what happens is we can go in, let's say this whole lower section is highly inflamed, and then they can go in, and this is when you get the ileostomy, and they dump this to the outside externally, they put the bag on the outside. So we're just bypassing the large intestines because it's so irritated and it's so painful and it just interrupts your life. They'll just bypass it and you'll have that little bag outside, the colostomy bag. And so all the waste goes into that, and then you dump that out, and then you hook it back up. So your large intestines have time to heal, and then hopefully you can reverse that. You go back up, you go back and reconnect it, you take out the bypass, you reconnect it, and then your bowels hopefully heal, and that irritation's out of there, and then your large intestines starts working again. Minimum, you're going to be on it for 3 months. That's how long it takes to heal up. Some people are on them for up to a year, some people never come off of them. So you're constantly changing that bag. Unpleasant, yes.
There's a girl on YouTube that has one,
Uh,
and she like makes videos of herself and like shows how to clean it
Yeah.
and everything. So if you're curious about it,
Yeah, YouTube it. And it's, you know, you have an opening, an external opening, so your risk of infection is high. You're handling things, you're draining, you're cleaning, your risk of contamination is high. Plus just the irritation of having that with there's tape that holds it on. So they'll get pretty scarred up from it, you have to kind of move it around. I mean, you can only move it so much, but yeah, it's not a pleasant experience.
So it's always gonna be, the incision will always be in the large intestine.
Yes,
Okay.
large intestines. So small intestines we need for absorption. Once we've absorbed everything, we gotta get rid of it. And large intestines is just a pathway to get rid of it. So we can put that ostomy to cut out, we can put that anywhere in the large intestines. We put it wherever the irritation is. And then maybe we can take that off, everything is popped out, we can reattach it to the back end. It just depends on what the situation is.
Okay, when you have this process, why does it guys not happen to the food? Because it does not, it's not getting.
Everything's happened, now we're just elevating
So there's a process that doesn't happen
this part, elimination. We're eliminating the pathway through the large intestine.
Okay, that's why it smells so bad.
Just part of the breakdown, it doesn't have as much time to go through. So you're just exiting straight out, instead of going through and absorbing some water, absorbing some stuff. So that's the large intestines. What we were talking about, tinea coli, that's the band that pulls up the muscular, smooth muscle. The hostras are the pockets, and then those fatty little things, those are called epithelial appendages. Fat-filled pouches, not sure why those are there, but that's normal anatomy that you have those hanging out there. Microscopic anatomy, still simple columnar, except once we get down to the anal canal, that's stratified squamous because stuff is pushing out, so we want to have more resistance to friction. It has lots of crypts and goblet cells, so that they can secrete mucus, so that things can move through a little bit easier. The anal sinuses exude mucus, and they compress the feces so it can come out. The venous plexus is associated with this. This is where hemorrhoids come from. So we have a very porous area of veins, and when you're pushing down, it's pushing on those and it distends the veins, and that's hemorrhoids. Just like on the back of our knees with varicose veins, and the pressure is coming down in your legs, but when you're bearing down to go to the bathroom, then it distends those veins, and that's where hemorrhoids come from. Also a painful condition, very common during pregnancy because the baby's pushing down. And then if you're giving natural birth, not a C-section, pushing down, pushing down, pushing down. So that's a normal part of that process. Bacteria, we have good bacteria and bad bacteria. We call that our gut flora or bacterial flora for the large intestines. So bacteria survives the small intestines, it can enter the cecum, and then it can go all the way out. It just gets passed out through the whole system. The bacteria gets colonized, and we ferment, and when we're digesting carbohydrates, it's fermenting in there, and it can release those acids and those gases, that's flatulence. So we're breaking down things, that's a normal byproduct. Have you guys ever seen that video where they hooked up like a closed loop system, and they put like a little backpack on somebody, and it's collecting all the bowel gas for the day? Because we all have it, and then you see this backpack get bigger and bigger and bigger throughout the day. I forget what site that was on, but they were demonstrating that. Everybody like, oh, I don't do that, I don't do that. Everybody does that, but it was a scientific demonstration, and they had like 5 people, and they were showing how much. But that's what it is. It's the breaking down of whatever we're eating, proteins or carbohydrates, and then it ferments in there if we don't move through quicker, and the longer it sits, the more bowel gas we get, and the more foul smelling it becomes. Because you can have gas and it doesn't smell at all, right? Everybody's probably had that before. That's normal fermentation, and then you just like, oh, it's so gassy today. It doesn't have to be smelly gas. If it's smelly, that means it's sitting in there for a while and you're not pushing it out. And then also the large intestines are synthesizing our B vitamins and vitamin K. So other than digestion of bacteria, really no digestion is taking place in the large intestines. Water, vitamins, electrolytes are being reclaimed, so just like in the kidneys, the distal tubules getting all of the last little bits of everything that we need. The major function of the large intestines is getting rid of fecal matter. It's essential for comfort. Nicole is not essential for life. This is why we can have a colostomy. We are much more comfortable if we can do the process on our own. And it takes 12 to 24 hours travel time for foodstuffs to get through our system. It might be more, it might be less, depends on what's going on in there. Diarrhea versus constipation. If you have diarrhea, you're going through the system too fast, and the body doesn't have time to pull out the water, the fluids. And the body says, nope, we don't want any part of that. There's something irritating, and it says, just get rid of this, just push it on out. So sometimes if you had food poisoning, or you've eaten something that doesn't agree with you, or you McDonald's, or White Castle, Taco Bell, whatever your favorite GI cleanse might be. It pushes the body to like that, and it just pushes it out with diarrhea. Fairly quickly. That's what's going on there. The body says, no, no thank you, no thank you very much. Versus constipation, it sits in your system too long. You don't have enough fiber, you're not pushing things out. And the longer it sits, the body's absorbing water, and it gets harder and harder. So we're talking about like pebbles versus fluidy stuff. How long is it sitting in the gut? Defecation, so then remember we have our stretch receptors, the rectal walls are distending, so we get that stimulation. The internal sphincter relaxes, and then we hopefully are under voluntary control of the final process of the voluntary sphincter, and then we can go back. So you can hold it until you need to go, or to get to a non-public place. A lot of people don't like to go to public places. And they have like, so defecation, here's neurologically what's going on, is we get those stretch receptors are coming in, so food stuff is in there, we get that distension, we travel up to the brain processes it, and then we come back down and we release those internal and external. So that stimulus is going up to the brain, it says stretch, release internal, and then you're charged. All right,